The Skyline began as an econobox. Post-World War II, coming from the Prince Motor Company, the first model was produced in 1957, a four-door luxury car modeled after the American luxury yachts of the time. Like my New Yorker, but significantly smaller, the car came with an inline-four 1.5 liter, making 60 horsepower and topping out at an astounding 135 kilometers per hour, weighing 2,800 pounds. This may all seem like the car was a pathetic little boat, but it later came in a gorgeous coupe. This little guy had a larger 1.9 liter inline four, with the exterior being designed by the Italian designer Giovanni Michelotti. Imagine that, the Italians and the Japanese joining to meet a common goal. Anyways, he also designed many Ferrari and Maserati cars. His influence is said to be the precursor for the GTR trim. The first generation ended in '62. The Gen 2 S50 begun production in 1963 and was a major facelift. The S50 had several variants, with the first inline 6 engine being the G7 in the racing-focused GT trim. The car was exported to Hong Kong, Hawaii, and Europe in limited numbers, including a trim with a 1.9-liter diesel engine. The racing-focused 2-liter single-cam single-carb engine made over 100 horsepower and mated with either a 4 or 5-speed manual transmission, and finished second place in its first ever GT2 series race. After the race, a 2000 GT model was released to the public, producing 125 horsepower, and with a slightly longer wheelbase, the car sold incredibly well. This was the S54 model line and had optional 5-speed manual, a limited slip differential, an Arty steering wheel, racing belts, and racing suspension. In 1966, the Prince Motor Company was bought by the Nissan Motor Company, so some of the S50 cars were sold with Nissan markings. The C10 model was released in 1968, but had been developed mostly by the Prince R&D team, but was sold without any Prince badging, known popularly as the Hakoska. This model came in a 2 and 4 door, with a 1.5 or 1.8 liter inline 4 engine. In '71, the 2000 GTX model came out with the L20 inline 6 2-liter engine. The C10 was the new top sports car in Nissan's lineup. Now, introducing the most famous trim level of any car ever produced, the GTR. Introduced in 1970, the Hakoska GTR, or the PGC 10, used the L20 engine, producing 160 staggering horsepower. The original was a 4 door, but soon came in the famous 2 door that dominated the racing scene, with the only competition of the time being the Mazda RX-3. The C110 was the next generation of Skyline, produced from '72 to '77. Known affectionately as the Ken Mary, popularized by the ad campaign featuring a young couple named Ken and Mary, also as a nudge to the term Mary Ken, because the car was inspired by American muscle cars of the age. It came in the 4 door, 2 door, and wagon body styles. People immediately set about modifying these cars, and almost none remain in their stock body styles. The wheel industry exploded to accommodate the demand for those personalizing their cars. Coming with the same inline 4 and inline 6 engines, ranging from the G16 1.6 liter to the L24 2.4 liter. These cars were sporty as hell and enjoyed by many, especially on the Japanese mountain roads that were quickly being paved and made accessible to speed demons and car guys who wanted to bomb down the hills and through those tight mountain passes. Tragedy has struck the global economy. The gas crisis of the '70s has hit, and the world turns to boring, gas sipping cars, and the GTR trim falls out of production. The fifth generation, C210, was produced from '77 to '81 without the GTR trim, instead with a turbocharged GTEX. The 2-liter turbo engine had 140 horsepower and came through a manual 5-speed, also strangely lacking in intercooler or blow-off valves, but used the same single-cam L20 block as has been standard for decades. The wildest thing is these GTEX cars came in both 2 and 4 door versions, claiming a maximum speed of 180 kilometers per hour. These models were the first to be widely sold in Europe and were a success, but have been unloved in recent years. The sixth generation, produced from 1981 to 85, and was the first to use the R chassis designation as the R30. Maintaining the inline 4 and inline 6 engines, also in diesel, these cars were more economy focused but modernized. They had four wheel disc brakes and four valve cylinder heads. The R30 utilized the same chassis as the C31 Laurel. The RS and RSX were the higher trim levels, featuring inline 4 turbo engines producing 200 plus horsepower. The most famous of this generation was the Silhouette race car, which had the old L20 engine model but producing over 500 horsepower and shared very few similarities of the road going car, with tube chassis frame and Mooncraft bodywork, racing in the Fuji Super Silhouette series. The Skyline RS Silhouette Formula, Jesus, scored 2 wins in 82 and 5 wins in 83. The sixth generation R31, produced from 1985 to 89, was a longer and larger R30 with boxier styling, if that's even possible. Placed on a C32 Laurel chassis, the same 4 and 2 door cars came with a few inline 4 engines, but the majority of the cars were powered by the brand new RB engine platform. The R31 has been cheap and readily available for decades and has been a tuner's dream. These RB engines are stout, reliable, and all use the same short block casting. The R31 came with the RB20E, ET, RB20DE, and DET, and the reclusive RB30 engine, which has a taller deck height than the normal RB engines and was the only 3-liter to ever be produced. The GTS-R was almost a GTR trim but fell just short. It came with a Hikis 4-wheel steer system and had very similar engine design, with 6 large intake runners splitting into 12 independent runners, one for each intake valve. This was the first car to be raced with the famous blue calsonic livery, having some racing success, but nothing dominant like the R32 GTR Godzilla, the most dominant racing car to ever race. The car that permanently launched the GTR trim back into pop culture internationally. The car came in the 2-door GTR trim, the Ateza all-wheel drive system, Hikis 4-wheel steer system, and the RB26 DETT, a twin-turbo 2.6-liter beast, paired with a 5-speed manual and a lightweight, short-wheelbase chassis that has been praised as the greatest chassis ever made. Produced from 89 to 94, the car also had a 2-door rear-wheel drive variant, the GTST, powered by an RB25 DET 2.5-liter single turbo. All turbo models came with a viscous LSD. These are very common and a tuner's dream. There was a 4-door variant that came with naturally aspirated and single turbo engines with automatic and manual transmissions. These cars could be as pedestrian as a Camry or an absolute drifting dream. They remain extremely popular and have a cult following. There were no wagon models of the R32 as they reclassified the car as a compact to lessen tax and insurance rates, but retained the back seat for the same reason. 43,000 GTR trims were made, and 270,000 regular trim cars were made, meaning these cars are available in numbers even now, with their engines being passed through the aftermarket and used everywhere, from boats to race cars. The R32 was such a perfect vehicle that they decided that they could simply never make it better. They said the next model, it needs to be bigger, it needs to be longer, it needs to be heavier. Do we want to give it more power? No, just make it worse so that we don't have to dominate every single race like we did last time. So that's what they did. The R33 is the middle model, the red-haired stepchild that I love. Produced from 93 to 98, this car might be going away from that beautiful blocky style. It might look worse, it might be bigger, but there's something about it being the hated one that I just find endearing. The R33 is the most unloved GTR model, mostly because of its larger size and curvier styling. This model was the first designed with computer flow dynamics, so every body line was made to increase airflow over the body and resolve the uplift issues of the R32. The car was better balanced, lower, and handled better than the R32. The V-Spec GTR was 23 seconds faster around the Nürburgring than the R32. The R33 never saw the racing success of the R32, as the competition had caught up in the time between, but did dominate the JG TC GT500 class until the McLaren F1 GTR came into the series. The R33 has the most variants of all Skyline models. Buckle up because with 5 different engine variants, all in 2 and 4-door, and all but the GTR coming in an automatic. At the lowest econo spec is the GTSS, coming with an RB20E single cam 2-liter manual or automatic in 4 and 2-door. The GTST coming with the RB20DET 2-liter dual cam single turbo in 2 and 4 doors auto or manual. The best of the non-GTR trim, the GTS 25T, coming with a single turbo 2.5-liter dual cam optional ABS Hikes 4-wheel steer and 2 or 4 doors. The GTR, with the same 2.6-liter twin turbo dual cam, produced almost 270 horsepower but easily making 300 plus, also came in a limited Autech 4-door and the 100 unit 400R model, a 400 horsepower monster, which today resells for nearly $1 million. What I consider to be an in between model and honorary Skyline is the Stagia. Produced from 96 to 2001, technically based off a Laurel chassis, but uses the GTR drivetrain, powered by all of the RB engines and auto or manual trans, these wagons are the most underrated and underappreciated car possibly ever. Every family man car guy should own one of these. They are fast, they are comfortable. The 260 RS trim is essentially a GTR wagon. Unfortunately, the second generation went the way of modern cars and was more SUV than wagon. These were produced until 2007, came with a VQ engine, and almost all came with automatic transmissions. So the second gen has been excommunicated from the Skyline family. The final Skyline model, the R34, was made from 98 to 2002. This introduced the Neo engine and discontinued the RB20E engine. The GT model came with the same old RB20DE. The GT Plus models came with the new RB25DE Neo, a 2.5-liter naturally aspirated engine coming in a 2 and 4-door manual and automatic, and the 4-door having an all-wheel drive variant, the GT4. The GTT came with a higher-tuned RB25DET Neo, the pinnacle of single-turbo RB engines from the factory making 280 horsepower. The GTR trim was the highest tech yet and had revised N1 turbos with new steel bearings and made more efficient power to the gentleman's agreement 280 horsepower, but would make much more with almost no effort. These cars are the most striking and favorite of the Skyline family. The GTR came in a ton of variants. The V-Spec came with improved aero. The V-Spec N1, only 45 were made and were essentially a factory race car. The V-Spec 2 came with a carbon hood. The M-Spec was a luxury version with heated leather seats and softer suspension. The V-Spec NUR came with an N1 motor and a 300 kilometers per hour speedometer. Just as a hint to the spec, only 750 were made. This is where the Skyline dies. It is very sad, but hopefully we'll see a resurrection in the future. No, I swear to God, if you say this is the 11th generation V35 Skyline. The R chassis code is gone, and the V35 is a Camry. No, literally, it's a Toyota Camry competitor. The car is on an elongated Z33 Fairlady Z chassis with the same engine and rear wheel drive. Almost all were automatics. Some special releases had the Atezza all-wheel drive system. The car was sold in America as an Infiniti G35, and the retards that own that car claim that they own a Skyline and can all go die in the same hole. You own a four-door 350Z, so sit down and shut up. There were no more inline sixes, no more GTR trim level, and no more four-wheel steer. The Japanese racing market never adopted the new Skyline model and continued their development programs using the 32, 33, and 34 models. The V36 is the same fucking car, just uglier. Again, this was sold in America as an Infiniti G chassis and later came as a coupe. This coupe is a fat 350Z. This is a perfectly acceptable sports car making 330 horsepower. It simply is not a Skyline. The corporate penny pushing shit dicks tried to revive the Stagia and fucked that up too. It's now an SUV that even a middle class soccer mom wouldn't want to drive. They called it a Skyline crossover. Fuck this car, I'm done talking about it. Bastards almost did it. The V37 is a decent looking sedan. Honestly, if I didn't like cars and I had two kids to take to school every morning, I'd drive this car. It came as a turbo four-cylinder hybrid. This car came as a coupe, called the Infiniti Q60, which is a pretty cool car. The most recent car is the Skyline Nismo, unveiled in 2023 and only had 1,000 produced. Remember that cool GTR trim level from about 20 years ago? Oh yeah, let's check what's been going on with that. Well, shit. The GTR is now its own model line. In 2007, the Nissan GTR was released worldwide. The chassis code is the R35 and carries the Skyline model as a purely halo car model line. This car is completely different from anything we've gone over so far, closer to a supercar than the sports car of old. The car was powered by a VR38 DETT, the highest horsepower engine ever produced in Japan up to that point. A 3.8-liter twin-turbo V6 making nearly 500 horsepower. Every single one of these engines was hand-built and has a plaque with the signature of the engine builder on the front of the intake. These cars were front mid-engine with a rear transaxle dual-clutch 6-speed with the Atezza ETS all-wheel drive system, the first ever to do this. That being said, these cars were not the lightweight, nimble cars from ye olden times. They are heavy and big by comparison. This is mine sitting next to a modern GTR. They were sold until 2025, a really impressive model run for a single model with no major changes. There were facelifts and updates every few years, keeping up with style changes, but when it was released, it was ahead of its time. Even with it being in development for nearly 7 years, the 2016 refresh also came with a major jump in power to over 560 horsepower. The GTR raced in a bunch of different series and found universal success. Not dominating in anything, but being a competitor everywhere, doing exceptionally well in the World Endurance Championship and GT1 Championship. I was personally in attendance at the 2023 Tokyo Auto Salon for the announcement for a final update to the GTR. The final tech and aero upgrades carried this car into the Car Hall of Fame forever. This car truly went out on top in 2025, with the final model leaving the plant. This has been my love letter to the Nissan Skyline. Before about 6 years ago, I really only knew the Skyline from a distance as that cool sports car I see on YouTube every once in a while. Moving to Japan and having friends owning them and then buying my own, I've considered myself a car guy since high school, but I truly didn't enter the car community until I bought mine. The people I've met and the experiences I've had have led me to wanting to chronicle this car. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed, please let me know if I should do another similar video on something you love.